Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. Hilchos Tumas Tzoras. We are already up to Prakim Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and Yud Gimel. So we're going to begin on Perek Yud Aleph to finally learn about the Tahara process, which is a phenomenal process of a Mitzayra. Perek Achadasar has 10 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, Taharas Mitzayra, that the purification of a person that is already afflicted with all of the different types of tzaras that we learned above is a mitzvahs asay, is a positive commandment. On top of that, the tiglachtoi kishiyitar, and this specific step known as the shaving, as we'll see, that they have to shave all of the hairs in their body while they are becoming pure, is also a mitzvah saseh. Zok the Rambam, nu keitzad metaran hamitzayra. So we already learned above, when it comes to all of the siman tzoras, that if some disappear, as every time the Rambam says exactly what needs to go away, now you can begin the process. Okay, so what's the process? So first of all, maybe mizrak shel cheres chadash. You have to bring a new earthenware container. And why new? Says that I'm on the Kabbalah. That's how we received it from Moshe. Sheyeh chadash. And you have to fill it up with a quarter of a loik of mayim chaim. Now we already described mayim chaim in the laws of paraduma. In other words, the same types of waters that are ru'uyim lekadosh oisim mechatos. And why does it have to be a revius? Here again, says the Rambam, the Shir says medivrei soifrim. Maybe and you bring 2 now tzipor dror. I know whoever's using a chayenu, right? He's translating it to sparrows. Actually, tzipor dror means a free bird, a bird that's flying freely. And you have some of these types of birds that are not kosher. You have to bring 2 tziporim dror that are tohoiros, but they have to be brought from the outset l'shem taras tzoras. As it says, the lokach, when you take it, it already has to be with the kavana lam mitahir. Now, you look at the 2, you pick the one that looks healthier, and you do shchita over the water that's inside this earthenware vessel. And after you do the shchita mamatza, you squeeze the blood out until it's apparent in the water that there's blood in it. Because these little sipoidim droyer, they're very little many times. And there's very little dam. You have to squeeze it out. And look at every step. It's like from the Eibishter. And then you have to dig a hole and you have to bury the bird in the presence of the Mitzayra. Trying to think, is there any other mitzvah that we can remember that you have to bury a creature other than a human being? I don't know. And they have to bury it in front of you. Now, guys, don't forget, you still have a living bird now. And so what do you do now? Now, you take a piece of the tree, of an eres tree, and the mitzvah is that it should be at least in the length of an amon, and the thickness should be a fourth of the thickness of a bedpost. The Rambam does not write exactly what that means. So let's go weiter. And then you take an ezoif. And also, as we learned in the Hilchos Paraduma, there are many types of hisab, but some of them are stam called ezoif. Some of them are ezoif from this place, from that place. That's not the one you want to take. The ezoif she'ein lo shem levai, as we learned concerning Paraduma. Now, ein pachos mitefach. So the eres, it's mashma, it should be an amma, not minimum, maximum, an amma. The eitz eres should not be less than a tefach. And ushni toila'as, which is wool that was dyed with that type of plant that has these little bugs in them, right? And these berries are very red. And how much of this wool? Mishkali shekel. And when you are dyeing the wool to be used here with that very red dye, you have to use it exclusively for the mitzvah. But if you dyed it also for another purpose, it invalidates all of the dye, as is the rule when you are dyeing tcheles from this snail-like chilazain, right, that you have to use that exclusively for the mitzvah of dyeing the strands that will be placed, which is the ideal mitzvah on the four corners. And all of the shiurim are halacha. Also lahoy. Sometimes the Rambam writes Kabbalah. Sometimes the words are Shemua, right? Sometimes the word is halacha. I'm sure there's a difference. The Rambam is using all of these lashonos. And then with these three, you also take now the living bird. So now you have four: the eight eres, the ezoif, the shnitoy las, and the living bird. They're all essential. You cannot skip either of them. None of them. Another detail: the eight eres or the ezoif sheneskalfu. If some of their bark was peeled off, they become invalid. Now, the eres. You tie the cedar together with the hyssop using the l'shain shel tzohidis, right? You are using the wool that was dyed red. So now these three are bound together. Umakif lohem, and around them you're going to put both the rashi agapayim, the tips of the wings, and the rosh hazan, the tip of the tail of the living bird. And when everything is in that position, now the toivel al batam amayim shebekli. Now you dip it into the water, and the water that we mentioned that has apparent blood in it. Umaza sheva pamim, and you sprinkle it 7 times. Al achar yodoi, on the back of the hand. Al means over here, on the back of the hand of the mitzvah. Only God can come with this. And now you send the living bird away. Now a mitzvah is chutz lamachna. So you're doing this right near the wall. And now the person holding the bird walks into the city, and he throws it that it should fly out of the city. But not towards the sea, if there's a sea in that vicinity, not to the ear, not to the desert. In other words, the goal is to have the bird fly out of the city. Now, if you sent the bird and it right away returned, so now we did the first step. Well, the first step on what will turn out to be the first of the 7 days is what we learned up until now. And now, step number 2 is that the kohen will shave the mitzvah. How do you shave him? Shaving here, mamish, means everything. You have to pass a razor dafka over all of the visible skin. All the visible skin. It's not exact. It's more than what we learned yesterday, that when he's being inspected to see if all of the shaving was done properly, there the inspector doesn't have to look, let's say, under his arms. Elamad, the person appears like we learned in a certain position. A man has to appear, like a woman has to appear. But here, when you're doing the shaving, it has to be everywhere. Afilo beis hashechi, even under the arms, even beis ha'erva. Seir shal kol aguf, until this person becomes like a dalas. Maybe in English, there's also lahav dalaza expression, smooth like a pumpkin. Okay. Shenemer, as it says, as kol means all. If I remember correctly, somewhere we learned in the Gemara, the only hair that's not shaved is the eyelashes. If it's taka all, why does the Torah specify the head, the beard, and the eyebrows? It's coming to exclude something. It's coming to include everything that's visible. What is it coming to exclude? Hair inside the nose. Because it's not visible, no matter how you stand. And then, so we had the sprinkling of this whole mixture. Number 2, the shaving of all of the hair. Now we're going to learn about kibbutz begodav. Now I know that sometimes when you read the word kibbutz begodav, it means mikvah, not over here. Actually, just like we learned when it came to Hilchas Nida, that if there is a kesem and you want to determine whether it's dam, whether it's something else, right? So we had the Mishnah, the Rambam brought already down in Hilchas, I think Yisuri Bia. There's 7 ingredients that you use, and if it removes it, it's aray that it's dam. That's the type of kibbutz begodim that happens over here. Well, Actually, I take back what I said. I'm already up to pedicure base. This kibbutz begodav, he's writing a footnote here that atake means the mikvah. Means you take your garments to the mikvah, and then the person goes to the mikvah. Okay, I stand corrected. And now the yitayid milatama bebiyah. What happened? Not that you're completely pure. That extra chumrah that we learned about yesterday, right? In pedicure halacha yud beis, that when a mitzvah enters a bias, the adam, the kalim, and the bias become tummy. At least this is removed. And also, he's tahor from imparting tumas mishkav u'moishav. Now, mishkav u'moishav is not unique to a mitzvah, but it's a tumah chamura. No longer that happens. Another detail, now he's allowed to enter lifnim and achayim. That's why I mentioned that the shaving was done right, the sprinkling was done right outside the wall. Elamad, the kohen that's doing it, walks inside and he throws the bird out. But now the mitzvah can already come in. Now we count 7 days. Now what's also interesting is that the Rambam paskin that during the days of mitzvah muchlat, and certainly during the days of mitzvah musgar, right, ein bain, mutar b'tash m'shamita. But now that he's in the 7 days of clean days, now we're also b'amatach m'shamita. Because here the Torah says, michutz la'ahaloi melamed, she'asa b'tash m'shamita. And however, a woman who undergoes all of these steps, the difference will only be man and woman is that she, even during the week of the 7 clean days, is muteres betashmish hamita. Amazing. Halacha beis. Kol shivas yom ha'elu. Dayin hu abatuma. Even though he's not matama bebiyan the bias. He's not matama in mishkav u'moishav. But the mitzvah and the mitzvahs, man and woman, they still have the level of abatuma, which means that they are matama adam v'kelim b'magam. But again, not b'masa. And guys, prior to this first many steps, they were matama b'masa, like we learned yesterday. Shaharei. Now the word shaharei is not a proof that it's loy b'masa. The Rambam wants to prove that they're still matama b'maga, because l'chayram, now that they're not, they can enter the machna. They're not matama when they enter a home. They're not matama mishkav u'moishav. Maybe they should not even be matama b'maga. No. So the proof is when it says vayayamashri chidus v'gadov, means at the end of the 7 days there's going to be another important steps that need to be done, and one of them is chidus v'gadov. Why chidus v'gadov? Melamed shay matama b'gadov. Now, begadim, adam and kalim always go together. Because that's the rule. Any source that has enough tumah that could impart it to begadim can impart it to Adam. And let's go by. So now you went through the 7 days. Now you're up to the 7th day. You have this act of shaving done as it was done before. And again, here it means taking it to the mikvah. And then the person, the mitzvah goes to the toivel. And now the yitayim milatam achim. They're not fully pure. Now they are like every other tvul yom. They're not matama chulin. Not only that, they're not matama meiser sheni. They can eat meiser sheni, but they cannot eat truma if he's a kohen. They certainly cannot enter the Beis Hamikdash. And here, our mitzvah is one of the arba mechusre kapara. Guys, we just learned in the previous sefer Hilchos mechusre kapara. The Rambam is not going to repeat the karbanos of the mitzvah. We learned it before, and only after he brings the kaparas, as we learned in Hilchos mechusre kapara, then oichel b'akachim, as was already explained. Wow, azap procedure, l'chaim halachigim. Let's go to more pratim about the shaving. First of all, has to be done with a razor. If it was done without a razor, or if they only left 2 hairs, nothing was accomplished. But now when they did the second shaving, they got all of them, even those 2 hairs. So at least the second one counts for the first one. which means now you have to undergo a nachamol the whole 7 days, and you have to have another shaving on the 7th day. Another detail, chol hayoim, meaning from sunrise to sunset, is kosher l'taras hametzoyim. Halacha dalet. Tiglachas hametzoyim utfilosim hazrosoi. Now the steps of the shaving, his tefillah, and the sprinkling einoma akva zuazu. Now watch what einoma akva is. V'shar kol ma'isov, where the sending of the bird, the face, shar ma'isov is the toiveling of your begodim, they are ma'akvin. I don't know exactly how to apply halacha dalet, but I'll go by it. Halacha shchitas atzipoin, step number 1, the tiglachas and the shaving number 2, azoy and the sprinkling number 3. I don't know why the Rambam goes out of the seder, because the shchitas atzipoin and the azoy comes before the taglachas. All of that has to be done only by day. However, v'shar kol ma'isov b'mayom b'malayla. Now, elu has to be done ba'anoshim, but the v'shar kol ma'isov could be done bein ba'anoshim, bein b'noshim. Like the bird, that's what he means, can be sent away by a woman. When we speak about men, elu, the shchit of the tzipor, the teglachas, the hazoya, has to be done only by a kohen. It's a male kohen. Shar kol ma'isov can be done bein bar kahan and bein b'Yisrael. Halacha vav. Taharas mitzvah zu, this procedure leheges ba'aretz and ubechutz la'aretz. Even though you have a shchita, it doesn't matter. It's not that it was kachur. V'haraya you do it michutz. And it's done whether the temple is standing or v'shaloi b'fnei habayis. No, you're going to need the Beis Hamikdash for the karbanos that they bring on the 8th day. Not yet, but these steps can be done anywhere. Another detail: the kohen shetimai mitzvah l'taroi. Just like we learned yesterday, that ideally, if you went to the kohen the first time and you were, let's say, quarantined, you should return to that same kohen. That kohen should go all the way to the end. He should be the one doing all of the steps above. Shenemer, as it says, l'taroi oy l'tamai. Now let's speak about the kohen. V'hakoyel, meaning all of the kohanim are keshedim l'tayid hametzoyda. Even if this kohen himself is a zav, even if this kohen now is to make mace, doesn't matter. He can perform all of the procedure. Another din, ve'ein mitzoyda. But if the kohen is a mitzoyda himself, zoisloi, a kohen that's a mitzoyda cannot be mitayid hametzoyda. Another rule, ve'ein mitadin shnei mitzoydaim ka'achas. You cannot do it together to 2 mitzoydaim. Because she'ein oisen mitzvahs chavilos. Halacha zayin. Eitz erez. This is mamash fascinating. Ve'ezoi ushni toilas that was used for one mitzvah. Later, not together. Mitayr behem mitzvahim acherim. You can reuse it. V'chein tzipara mishtalachas. Even the word that was sent away, you don't say I was used once; it can't be used again. Now, truth be told, the Rambam wrote before that when you sent it and it returned, you have to send it away again. Well, you're going to use it and then send it away again. It's not a stira. And you may eat it. That I don't understand. Because if you have to send it away 100 times, because if it returns to the city, you have to send it away. It means if you chapped it outside the city, there you can shecht it and eat it. However, the tzipar hashchuta, even though you shechted it, asura b'ano, which is also why you bury it. Burying animals is by kachur. Suli hamikdashim that we had. From when does it become asur b'hano mishas hashchita? Now, shchata, if you shechted it, taka, but the ain't sham ezer eitz erev relation to us. In other words, you can't use its blood because you don't have these materials. Still, harezu asur b'hano. The shchita is not ru'uya. And there's a machlekes, remember, shchita ru'uya, shma shchita, lav shma shchita, the Rambam says shchita shem ru'uya is shchita. So the halacha that from when you shechted it, it's asur b'hano, is applicable, even though chaval, you can't do the next steps because you don't have the ingredients needed to dip into the mayim with the dam. Next. The person ate from such a kazayis. No, you're not eating the velar, but avar both alasei and al loisase. Shenemer, as it says, v'zasher loy toichlu mehem, and mipin yashmol lamda, that this love in the parsha of Re'eh of Kashrus is referring to the Sipar HaShchuta, and it also says Tohoiro Techelu, Bechlal, which implies Ha'acheres Lo Yisaychu. And the Laba Bechlal Asay has the level of an Asay. Next, Halacha Ches. Ein Loichin Shtei HaTziporim Mitzipori Anaredachas. You don't take these two birds if it's from a city that was already condemned, not from Tziporim that were exchanged for a Avodah Zarah, not for birds that ended up killing someone, which they will, they should really be put on trial and if found guilty, put to death, as we learned in Sanhedrin. I know it sounds strange the first time, but that's the way it is. And it's ideal for them to be equal, both in their appearance, in their height, and in their value, mamash, as we had by the two Seirim of Yom Kippur, and also ideally buy them at the same time or take them at the same time. Now, all of that is only lechatchila. Therefore, if they're not, they don't look alike. Or if you bought one today and one tomorrow, stay a post facto kshedes. Another thing, if you bought these two birds l'shem ish, they could be used l'taibem isha. If you, in other words, when we learned that you have to take it to be mitchayer, you can change for whom, and even change the for whom in the gender. L'shem isha kshedes l'taibem ish. L'kachem l'taibem bayis menuga, as we'll learn soon, kshedes l'tayir adam. L'kachem l'adam kshedes l'bayis menuga, because it says l'kach l'mitayir, and all of these they equally need the same type of tara, because whatever it's bias or whether it's man or woman, if they all have the same type of mitzoras, they are under that umbrella. So taking it for that is good enough. Halacha 9. Shachat achas mihem, if you shechted one of these two birds and you discover that it's not droid, it's not the type, again, whether droid means sparrow, whether droid just means a tzipor that does not like to be domesticated, but you discover afterwards you got the wrong one. The other one was good, the one that's still alive. You don't have to get another two. Here you can get just one to match it up. And more than that, now that you discovered that it wasn't the shechita on a tzipor dror, shechita's matter a bird to be eaten. In other words, it was never good, so you can eat it. Shachat achas, and you find it to be treifa. So first of all, you didn't lose the other one. You can keep the other one. You have to just get one more to pair it up. And enachanami treifa may not be eaten. But here again, since it's treifa, so it's b'chlal not in the parsha of taharas mitzvah. This isur of hana does not apply, so at least it's mutar b'hana. And final halacha yud nishpach adam. If the chacham you shechted the bird, you got the right bird, but the blood spilled out. Now you got a problem. Meaning, it's not enough for you just to replace this one, and you can pair it with the other. Now you have to get two more. In other words, manichin as amishtalachas achatamus. Can't get for it a pair, which would mean you need to get two new birds. And same thing that if after you did the shechita, even though there is blood in this one, mesa amishtalachas, the one that you were planning to send away died, then you need another pair. Yeshafech adam, and in both cases, in halacha yud, v'yikach shtayim acherois. Mamish fascinating. So now we learned the steps of the Tara of a Mitzvah, and with this, the Rambam completes in the first 11 chapters all of the types of Tzoras Adam, the various levels of Muskar Muchlat, when the signs that made you Tameh physically no longer are there. This chapter was all the steps that needs to be done for the Mitzvah to become pure. The only thing that Rambam doesn't repeat is for Kachem, the Karbanos that we learned, right? I think it was in Sefer Karbanos, the Mechus Kipurim. Now, today's next two chapters, both Yud Beis that we're going to learn now, and then Yud Gimel, is going to be speaking about Nigei Tzoras Begadim. And we're going to begin with the general rules of Tzoras Begadim. What will be mamash amazing is that sometimes they share mamash say the same rules of Tzoras Adam, and sometimes they're very different. But let's begin. Perek Yud Beis, Perek Shnei Masar has 13 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Tzoras Begadim. So here the rule is how large of a discoloration on the beged needs to be for you to have a problem. The minimum size is kigris, Here it's just like Kitzoras Adam. Let me just say by heart. The type of this color has nothing to do, right, by Adam, by the Baheres. I'm not talking about the unusual cases of the hair. Like we learned yesterday, that the Nesek doesn't, the Rambam, at least the way most understand, Shitos Rambam doesn't even have to be discolored, just a bald spot. But normally Baheres is a white, a certain type of white. By Begodim, not white. White is not the problem. Every step we'll have to go over. First of all, size. Size is the same. And if it was less than a gristar. Now look at these words. Ushloisha simane tuma yeshba. I just want to point out that in the previous segment, the word simanim were used in the following context. First, there was a discoloration. That was not called the siman. That was the baheres. And then, right, if you have the shloisha simanim, whether you have the shnei simanim, that will make it into a muchlat. Here, the Rambam doesn't use. The Rambam doesn't use these same terms. We change a little bit the language. In other words, even the discolored garment itself is called a siman of tumah. What are the but there are three simanim. Number one, yerakrak, if it turned green, as we'll specify in a moment, or if the garment turned red, adamdam, or now the pisayin again can only happen if first it turned green or red or both, and then it spread. That will be this siman of pisayin will mamish be like we have by other, and all of these three simanim are written explicitly in the Torah. Now, when you speak about colors, just like when it came to the white, so of course all of this you have to have a training. But the Rambam described the four shades of white. Here, it's not any shade of red or green. Yerakrak is dafka hayorik sheba yerukin, very, very green, which is shuhu yorik harbe keknaf hatavos. It's either like the green of the wings of a peacock, or it's like the green kuhutse hadeka, like the leaves of a date palm. So it's very strong green. And the adamdam, the red is also very red. Uha sheba adumim, intense red. Shuhu adim harbe kizohayris yafa. It's like Zohayris Yafa, going back to the Shni Toila'as, the type of red dye that you take out of that berry, that's the red. Ushnei Maraselo, even though you have to have the minimum size of a gris, it doesn't have to be a full gris of green or of red, but you can use together. But start from Zemzem. And it's amazing that if, today, the colors would be the colors of Christmas. These are the colors. Red and green, or the colors of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and many other of the nations that shows today, that's their choice to be Soine Yisrael and enemies of God, and they all represent themselves with the colors of green or red. It's amazing. Now, even though we're calling them three simanim, in the previous segment, when you have a siman tumah, you become muchlat. Here we're using a little bit of language. So the Rambam says, "B'mara damdam." If you have the red or the green or the both, that's not enough to become muchlat. Now, like we had the concept of quarantining, then you're masgir the beged. However, now let's go. What happens now? If it remained the same, what did we learn by Adam Dani? Remaining the same gets you scot-free. Right? By Adam, if you have the baheres for 2 weeks, if you don't have any of the shleisha samanim there, the kohen sends you home. Here the opposite. If it didn't get better, you'll become machlitin. Now, by a beged that becomes confirmed, a beged that's sorua, not like Adam, not like bias sometimes, that there's a purification process. There's no purification process. Here you have to burn it. Once a beged becomes muchlat, v'sorfen. Another siman, that's why we're calling it a siman, because that in itself, if it stays for 2 weeks, got it. That's why it's called a siman. So green for 2 weeks. Now, not right away. Or in Pasa, if when you come on day 7, or if you come on day 13, if you see that discolored green or red or both grew, expanded, machlitin, that also renders the beged into a confirmed beged, that's tzarua, and now v'sarfin, you have to burn it. That's why we call it very good. Shloisha samani tumam. Ketzad, for example, so just that, like we said, only makes it into a muskar. And you don't see it during this week. This follows the rules of Adam. Only dafka on the seventh day. L'choira, only dafka during those hours that the Rambam described, right? 4 and 5, 9 and 10, or whatever those hours were, when the sun is punct to where it should be. If it spread, machlitoi, meaning again, if it stayed the same, in other words, the intensity of the red or the green did not diminish, but it didn't spread. Or even if it did spread, but the color itself became less intense. It's still green, still red, but not as intense. Or if it got even more intense, but it didn't spread, now Yechabes. Now I want to say, that's where I got confused in the last chapter. This Yechabes, on the last chapter, Yechabes meant mikvah. Here, Yechabes by the begodim means washing it with all of the 7 simanim or samemanim, depends how your guide is. As we learned, when you wash out dam from a beged to determine whether it's dam from a woman, which will make the beged tamei, a sign of it is going to be a sign that the woman is tamei, or it's not. That's the Yechabes v'makamanega. And after you washed it in that seder, the yasker shivas yom shenis. Remember all these pratim. Now, which again is on the 13th day, that I'm already said it before. Im kar lamada shlishi. Lamada shlishi means not green, not red. That's what it means over here. Remember that. If it's a complete different color, then again, hareze tone kibus and v'tahar. Now, does this kibus mean mikvah? I think so. Maybe not. Maybe it means the same seder of before. But if it changed, but it went from yirak rak and it became a dam dam, so it's not a third color, green to red. Even if it changed, but from green to red or from red to green, so now listen to this detail. You only now have to rip out the place upon which you have this blemish, and you have to burn that which you cut out. But you saved the garment. You put a patch to fix whatever you took out. However, okay, clearly, kibus here means you wash it out, not mikvah, and and betar. If it stayed exactly the same for 2 weeks in a row, looked away when you came to the kohen, looked that way on day 7, looked away on day 13. Now yachlitoi. That's why we call it a siman tumah. The yisrav eskoloi halacha beis. If it was very strongly green and upasa, it had spread, but the added part is only a damdam. Or if it's a damdam, upasa yirakrak, yes, that's pesayim. No, it's not a new blemish. If it would be a new blemish, then it would only be muskar. Now it's mukhlat. And now you burn the garment. Halacha 3. Mamish like a michya, right? But if the discolored part is a gris or more, so then you have a muskar beged. But now, when it's spread in, not out. That's like we learned by Adam. No, it's expanding, spreading. Dafka is outwards. Consistent. Now, it's when it's spread to a place right there. Even if the area that now is expanded is kol shahu, meaning not a gris, or if it appears on another part of the same garment, or if the original blemish disappeared and now it returned, those have to have the size of a gris. It's the only time that less than a gris is a problem if it expanded from the original blemish ketza. Beged shuhuskar. And let's say when you come back on day number 7, it's not that the original one grew. That one stayed the same. Elamad, there's another one. But if that acher has the size of a gris, even though it's surachik min hanega shuhuskar boy, we don't say, Danny, oh, it's a new first step, so still quarantine. We don't say that. We will consider that pisoyan. It's not like nigei adam over here. In other words, we're saying that that's called pisoyan. If it would be adjacent, kolshahu. If it's another nega, when you come back either on day 7 or when you come back on day 13, if it's a pisoyan, you saw it. However, if like this, then you don't even look at it because it's like a new nega, and a new nega, not the size of the gris, is irrelevant. As we learned above. And if the nega came back, here again, what we need is not any amount that will not make it muchlat. Here also, only kegris, then you saw it. So then we say, Yisaref, mamish like by Nigei Yodam. Whenever you say Potter, like by Nigei Yodam, you don't say Potter, and now if it appears, you're starting from 0. You're not starting from 0. Very good. Halachei. Whenever we speak about kibbutz in this chapter, here that Rambam writes it clearly, first of all, when you wash it, you're not only washing the place of the neg itself, you have to wash at least some of the all surrounding area, because it says Eis Asher Boy Hanega, not to be machabes the nega. You're being machabes that which has in it the nega, which means you're being machabes the beged. Do you have to wash the entire beged? No, but at least some of all of the surrounding area. Now, what does washing it out mean? It means the same ones that you have to use, the Seder, ala kesem, shemavirim, ala ksamim, as we learned, nida, ready, suri pia, perek, tes, halachalov. And as we learned, whenever that was the right thing to do, you cut out the nega and you attach to it a matlas, a patch, a piece of garment. Kigris al habeged, guys, not on the patch. And now there is a new nega, but on the garment, not on the patch. Now, guys, what does that do, Danny? We learned it makes the beged. We just learned it, right? That's called pisoyan. Pisoyan means even in a new place, a nega kigris. So the beged has to be burned. But you know what the good thing here is? We don't say that the matlas has to be burnt with it. Matlas and matlas, you are allowed to detach that patch, and therefore it's saved. However, if it returned on the patch, then we don't say only burn the patch. No. Then the pshat is that it returned to the beged. And as we learned in the beginning of the chapter, okay, that's already the siman tuma from muchlat. Halacha zayin. Hatoiles am musgar betohor. So you took a patch, not as you should have, from a beged that's completely tahor, then. You took a patch from a garment that was musgar. You had no other patch. And you, chacham, you sewed it on. Stam, you had a hole in your pants, and you needed the patch, so you took it from a musgar.
Sometimes the patch is considered part of the garment.
No, but here, in other words, v'chazar nega al habeged. Danny, this doesn't mean on this new beged. If I had a beged musgar, so let's say, and I took a patch of it, if that beged musgar, which has to be shown on day 7 or on day 9, if that is rendered muchlat, it affects the patch. And now you don't have to burn the beged. You have to remove the patch, and it's good. So it's consistent. Or if you remove the patch from a beged musgar And now on this matlis itself, chazar ala matlis, there is now a new sign of red or green. Habeged hodishan amuskor yisarei. Oh, they remain, when you cut off a piece of the beged, it remains halachically connected. Beruchnius, it's amazing. So habeged hodishan amuskor yisarei. Now, v'hamatlis tishamesh es habeged sheitefur loy b'simanim. The patch, tishamish, means it obligates. It's machayev, the beged upon which it's sewn, to be assessed, Danny, to be analyzed with the simanim as we learned above. In other words, we do consider it, Danny, part of the second beged. And therefore what? Im amaver shnei shavuos, which is bad by a beged, oy pasa, then taka surfan hakoil. Hilchos patches. Halacha ches. Beged, another din in which nigei begodim and nigei adam are the same. So what did we learn? We learned that when a person came with a baheres ketana, let's use those words, and during the hesger, it spreads kuloi, he becomes tar. If lechatchila he came to the kohen with a baheres all over his body, he's not tar. He's like any other person that's coming with a baheres katana. For which, if later you have the three samanim, I know by hafach kulay lavan it's not shaykh pisoyin, but if there'll be a michya, he'll become tummy. Same thing over here. So let's go. It's not better than a beggar that has the gris of the yirakar yadamdam, and therefore must get a shvua achar shvua. And all the rules applies. You see that I'm also like here, like my other. You can't add the simon Danny of pisoyin because there's nowhere to which it could extend or expand or spread. It's already everywhere. Point is, it doesn't make it better by the fact that it's all over. But beged that appeared to a kohen the first time with a gris size, or I don't care with, but it wasn't all of it. Had the minimum, but it wasn't the entire beged shizgiroi. And now ufasa negar bekuloi, and all of it becomes yirakrak, or all of it becomes a damdam, or all of it becomes both, or it got lighter, it got less intense. So petare. But point is that we're not starting zero. It first had a problem, then it was dismissed. And now it comes now. Harei zeh tohoy, mamish like by nidei adam. Kibes ufasa yisareif. That's when you came first. When it wasn't full, it was not full. And when we had the halacha above in the Pedic that you have to wash it out with those 7 samamanim, if now it came and it spread to all of it, you still have to burn it. Halacha 9. Beged shemoichen yoitzin al panav min ha'arig. Now we're going to be learning both in this chapter and in the next chapter certain pratim that you'll better appreciate it if you'll understand how people would weave them. But let's go. So sometimes this is easy. You have loose strands of the fabric, right, of the beged that goes beyond the weave. Now, sometimes, like by a talis god, you do it on purpose. We're not talking about that. We're speaking about you have certain begodim, and you have a couple of hedelach, like by our kids, they that extend outwards. Beged shemoichin yoitzin upon them in ha'arik, kigoin sogois shol semer. This is something that happened in Bismana the Rambam when you had these woolen blankets. Right, you didn't make them with a rim around it or with a border around it, so it happened. And v'nira boy hanega, what happens if this nega kigris, but it only appears on the strands that are going out of the beged. So einoi mistame at sheyiro hanega b'moichen uba'arik atzmai. The blanket will only become tamei, right, if it appears on the beged itself. Now, the zeh shenemar babegodim bekorachtoi or bagabachtoi. Guys, we learned this Chitas. Rashi writes this Chazal. because the pasha doesn't fit. It's by Nigei Adam Torah uses these words, and as we learned it here in the Rambam. It's different types of boldness from the back, boldness from the front. The Torah uses mamish these words by a beged. First of all, how can a beged be bold? So Rashi Takawi, the Rambam is the same interpretation. The words karachtoi by begodim does not mean boldness. It refers to worn out garments. The word gabachtoi by begodim refers to brand new garments. If you remember, Rashi writes, why does the Torah use the same type of words to be makish? Now, this is probably an asmachta because ein hekesh lemechza, and we're not makish it entirely. Some dinim, nigei bigodim, and nigei yodim are the same because the Torah uses these same words. I'm just adding what Rashi writes in Rashi Chumash Rashi. Another rule. It comes to the green and the red. If you come with colored garments, now what the Rambam does not write here, and if you're not going to be medayik here, when you're going to learn the next chapter, you'll get stuck like I got stuck. The Rambam is only speaking about garments. What we will learn in next chapter, the Derech Hagav, is that nigei bigodim don't only include bigodim, clothing. I know a blanket is bigodim. It also includes kalim made out of leather. Not only bigodim made out of leather, kalim that are made, we'll see examples in the next chapter, Yechapet later. And I want you to know that when it comes to leather, what we're learning now is not shaykh to leather. And now we're going to learn that it's only, this whole simane tuma is only if the beged is white. Yes. On the oir, on the leather, and that even goes to garments made out of leather. Until today, people wear leather garments. There, it doesn't have to be white. There, you have a problem even if it's not white. Just remember, the halacha yud begins with the words begadim. Ha-begadim that are dyed in any color other than white, they're not shaykh, they're not subject to it. Whether they're dyed by people, whether they, naturally they have a different color. The only hilchos nigei begodim, but when I say begodim again, nigei begodim generically will include clay oil. No, begodim is if it's white. Now, when you are weaving a garment, you have the warp and the weft, or the warp and the woof, different ways of expressing it. Just to know, guys, if you remember, we learned this by Shabbos, the warp, just remember what we call it. The word warp are the strands that go to the length. They are the stationary ones on those weaving machines. And really, the threads are thinner. These pratim won't always be negaya, but we're going to go a lot this chapter, next chapter. The Rambam's point is going to be there are times that the strands that go in one direction and the strands that go in the other direction are not of the same color. And we don't follow roiv, we follow how it appears because there are different techniques in weaving. And sometimes one strand is the one that's appearing bechitzonius. That's the halacha in middle of Yud over here. Beged sheshisyoy, right? The tzavua, but v'arboy is lavan, or in the other direction, the arboy is tzavua v'shisyoy lavan. Now that we established the dinim of saras bigodim by bigodim is only if it's white, I don't care if you have in it what made the garment a garment when you weave. You don't weave it, it's going to fall apart. Even if one direction, either the woof or the warp is colored, I don't care. If it happens to be that the way you did this techniques is what appears is the white, then in other words, if it's nira white and now it becomes a damdam yirakrak, siman tuma or pesayim. If what appears is colored, then it's not shaykh, it's not subject to all of these halachas. Another din. Consistent with many other dinim, that any patch that's less than 3 by 3, whenever we speak about 3, guys, shalosh, remember, is amos. Shloisha here doesn't mean tfachim, it means finger breadths, and there's already a rule. Whenever halacha speaks about a finger breadth, it means thumb breadth, which is the thickest of the fingers. If it's less than 3 by 3, halachically it's garnished with nish. If it's not a beged, it's not subject to all of these dinim. Thank you for the picture. That helps. Because if you can see over here that the warp on the picture that he has up, which is the length, they're skinnier. In most cases, if the warp is going to be colored, if the ones that are, the weft is the one that's going in and out. But sometimes, if it's about the thickness of the threads. Okay, halacha yudal. Beged she'orag boy pachas mishalosh al shalosh. So you don't have this minimum size, not subject. However, v'nira by nega, the nega appeared. So what did we do? We discounted it. We don't care. And now you continue to weave that same garment. Now, the gris fits on less than 3 by 3. Nothing changed now. Since when it appeared, it was insignificant. Now that you made the beged, kadma, the tzaras to the beged, it remains tarred. There's no problem. Halachi base. Hatoifer matli yois. Matlis, b'loshen yachid, is a patch. Matli yois means patches. So if a person had many patches, none of them had 3 by 3, but you connected them, making a beged out of it. But you made a beged. Don't come and tell me since every single patch is less than 3 by 3, it's not subject. No, you made it into a beged. The beged is more than 3 by 3. It's the thread. The thread is not 3 by 3.
But if there was a nega on one piece that was smaller than 3 by 3, then you sewed it would be okay based on what we learned last
100%. Correct. Shahatafur, now, even though the patches were sewn through weaving, the way you connected the patches together, you didn't weave one into the other. You stamp sewed it. Sewing is not as strong as the weaving. It doesn't matter. Shahatafur is ka'aruk. And therefore, and correct. And if it now appears with tanega, you got yourself a problem. Final halacha of this chapter, halacha Yud Gimel. Beged shehu matliyois, like we mentioned. So you had patches, and you sewed the patches together. And some of them are tzavuyim, and some of them are levanim. And like we mentioned, by begodim, only white, the background white, only the beged white is a problem if you have the simanim of tumah. And now v'nira nega balav and shaboy. What do we say? Masgir and oisoi. And indeed, if it stayed the same for 2 weeks, as we mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, nitma kuloi v'yisarei. And we don't say dismantle it. No, it's one beged, and it appeared on the white. What do we have? That by ksamim, a little bit similar, not the same, right? So ksamim, one of the 3 aterim is if you find a kesem on something that's not white. But what happens if you have a sheet and there's a design on it? If you found it on the white, you got yourself a problem. If it has a gris and if it's a maradam, if the siman of Tumah was not that it stayed the same for 2 weeks, you come to the coin and you have a gris on the white part, and you come back on day number 7 and it expanded to the neighboring patch, which is white. Oh, then it is a pesoyin. And here the Rambam adds a chiddush. What happens if it spread a lot? Spreading a lot means it went through a patch that's tzavua. Let me add another detail. We also learned that spreading means, my friends, 2 things. Either spreading means it spread kol shehu, Danny, or spreading means that another discolored red-green appeared on the beged far away, but then that has to be the size of a gris. Again, to confirm, I think that Rambam means that if it spread through the colored, that's discounted, and then it vita spread into the next patch, even a mashu, you don't need it to be the size of a gris, because it's connected. Now, you call it sabuya if everything was color. Pass echad lavan. Mamish, all you had was one little polka dot of white. V'nira by nego also yaskir. The only thing is, guys, it's not shaykh pisoyan, because pisoyan into only tzavua doesn't do anything. So you don't have 3 simanim. So what would you do? How can you become muchlat if it stayed the same for 2 weeks in a row? She'im amad be'enav v'lei hoyse v'lei chosh shnei shavuos, then you sorei. In today's 3rd chapter, Perek Yud Gimel.
It's kind of like the same thing, right? Like a kesem where it's, you have a garment and it's.
I just said that, Danny. Welcome back. Yes, very good. Now, Perek Yud Gimel. This will be the final chapter now about Nigei Bigodim. Guys, Be'ezras Hashem, tomorrow we're going to be learning the final 3 chapters. We're finishing it out of Shabbos. Right now we're going to learn about Niga Begadim. What do we have to clarify? We have to clarify what's called a beged. I know we learned some pratim, it has to be white. What is a beged? What's not considered a beged? And the Rambam is going to clarify what type of tumas of Adam. We had a whole half of a chapter. Like what type of tumah? If the beged is tamei, now what? What will be the dinim of tumah? And finally, when we speak about musgar and muchlat, just like we had yesterday, ein bein musgar and muchlat, only the 4 dinim aside of the korbanos, as we mentioned. So we're going to learn a big nafkamina between a beged that's only musgar versus a beged that's, I know that a muchlat has to be burnt, but prior to burning, and again, din a tuman tara, we're going to learn about what happens if there's a mixture. I'll give you a mashal. A beged of a goy, I don't care if there's a neged sodas. What happens if there's a beged? Now, we one example of a yid, musgar, and now it got mixed up with begadim of a goy. You don't know what is which. Or a beged that's muchlat and it got mixed up. So we're going to learn certain nafkaminas.
See which one's got the neged
No.
on it.
You don't know who owns it.
They both have it.
No. Yeah, they both have. Correct. I'm sorry. They both have a neg on it. It's correct. Right? Okay. Because when anyone speaks about taroivus, there's a big question. What case can it be referring to? That's one of the conclusions that they come to. That works. Yeah, but it doesn't have any halach. If it happened, sure. The goyim kratzmach, they die all the begadim with sodas the whole time.
Yeah, but they dying it doesn't make it anything.
It means
If
something.
the Jew dies,
They know intuitively. They know they want to show the bell. That's a tummy. It's good. It's a good thing.
This whole idea of like the God showing up on the God, like how often this happens.
We're not worthy enough for it to happen to us. That's what the Alter Rebbe explains. But the fact that the Oibisha begins the whole parsha of Negoim and says, Adam is the Shem HaMayla, and if a person is a tzaddik, then their chesronis are only skin deep, and taka would show up. And the reason why we don't have it nowadays, Alter Rebbe writes, is because we're not on that level. You have to basically be a tzaddik and atzilus to be zoicha, to be shaykh to these dinim. That's the way he understands it. Perek Shloisha Asar has 15 halachas, guys. It's the longest chapter, but we're good with time. Thank God. Halacha out. Ein mi tamei mitachire binegoyim. What acquires tuma? Ella big date semen or pishtan bulvad. That's simple, right? The godim that are made either out of wool or linen. Now we're going to see clearly in the Rambam later that even if someone, God forbid, made a kalayim beggar, I'm not God forbid to wear it. It's also subject. Oy hashasi oy ha'edav shel shemen or pishtan. I don't know why I got stuck here yesterday until I hopped it. Threads. Not if only the length of the beged or only the width of the beged is semen or pishtan. The Rambam is going to write about it later. Clear. No, it means threads. Threads are also included. Threads of whether the threads are made. I told you the ones that go, we spoke in last chapter, that normally the threads that were put for the length, they were made thinner. They were spun differently. Doesn't matter. But also only from semen or pishtim to the exclusion of all other, today with the polyesters and silk and anything else. Cotton, nylon, shkoya. Lycra, v'chol klei ha'oir. Klei ha'oir, my friend, clear. Not only begotten, any item that's made out of leather. And here, ben kasha benach, the point of kasha is it's not shaykh to wear it. I think that's the point, is at the emphasis. Now, af ha'oir. Now in detail. If you have a leather is white, you show me leather, very rare. Even if there's a naturally non-white leather, metama bin goyim. Semer upishtin, whether it's thread, my friends, whether it's a beged, the hairs, that Rambam already said in the last chapter. White, vice, clay oil is different. Another din, halavadim felt is kebegadim.
If it's made of wool or leather.
Of course. Okay. It's very coarse. Umetamen binagoyim. Another din that the material that's used to cover oil is subject to, even though it's not a beged, but again, only if either it's semed or pishtin or made out of leather. Gewalt.
I understand the leather thing.
I understand none of these things.
What's the color? It has to be white.
No, hello, you wake up and that's the only exception. Not white.
Color. The whole point of seeing the color, like you know on white. Right? So everything's all white. You see the color, it's either red or green. How do you see red or green if it's a brown leather?
It's mamish not correct. That the reason why Chazal said that by a kesen, if it's an off-white, it's not latame at all. That's not because you cannot discern what color it is objectively. People that have shimush could. And off-white doesn't only mean on a black undergarment. It means even on off-white. It's not true. Since the Chachamim understood, since I'm going back to Nida, that it's only really herigish that's matama woman, even though nowadays we paskin that the vest is also matama her midoiraisa. And there are some shitas today that say, we don't paskin that way, that all the women are only tamim midrabanan. We don't paskin that way because there's no herigish. It's very significant. The Rebbe wrote a letter, not to be mefarsim the letter, earlier in the Rebbe's Nasias. It's a phenomenal letter that they were trying to make a big kol koida about going to the beach. It's a pritzus. They wanted the Rebbe to sign it. The Rebbe told them that he's not signing that letter. The Rebbe wrote that one of the terrible downgrades in observance is mikvah. It's mikvah, and the Rebbe said that when a woman goes to the beach, especially if here, I'm saying, if it's a nida d'oraisa, if it's a nida d'rabbanan, there's other kulas that you can have. So the Rebbe felt there's some value for the tara, for nida.
Like having an Erev in the city without people knowing.
That's correct. Let's not get into the Erev right now because that's very, I don't know why it became such an emotional topic right now.
So you're saying you see the color of this.
Yes.
This, whatever it is.
You could see the color. It's just that the Chachamim said.
Even if the leather itself is
brown, maybe not. But if you have the leather like the other side of many people's ritzuas, it's a light brown. People that know maras, they're amazing. Listen, I had the merit to sit by Rabbi Vosner. It's amazing. It was a mara there. I'll never forget that. And Harav Moshe Shol Klein, who was the Av Beis, and already when I was there. Rabbi Vosner was already not that young. I was there in the early 90s. So he sat in the back. Remember him looking at it. It was that shade. He couldn't get it. And he showed it to all of the big Dayanim there. It got stuck. I was there for 6 months. He didn't know. He went into Rabbi Vosner, came back. He says it was Tsoya. He took one glimpse at it. It was very impressive. He knew that he looked, it's Bachlalat from the Rechem. The amazing was, it was a glimpse for very amazing. You're looking at me. That's amazing.
You see colored leather. All right.
Okay, right. Let's go. Now we have to rush. Halacha base. Kol habegodim shel tamer upishtem etamim min goyim. Like we said, big godim chutz me big day goyim. Now halakech begodim min goyim. Yero batchila. Now this is a big chiddush. What we're saying over here is that we don't say, like we learned in the previous chapter, let's say that if this sign comes on a less than 3x3 and then you extend it, it's nothing. We don't say it over here. If a goy owned it and while it belonged to the goy, it had this red, while it belonged to the goy, it was nothing. But now that a Jew bought it, that same one is a problem. Elamah, when you look at it, it's as if it had just appeared. Guys, it's usher to wear it. I know that, but it's a beged. And still, it requires to misnegoyim. Halacha gimel, tzemer gemalim, camel's wool, tzemer rechelim, sheep's wool. If they're spun together, spun meaning you're making threads out of them. Now, guys, camel's wool is not tzemer. But now every thread is for spun mid beide. So now we go out right. And even if it's 50-50, same thing is if you're spinning. We're speaking about spinning threads, say from flax and from marijuana, cannabis, hemp, shatorfen zebozeh. Also, you follow Roiv. Another detail about the sheep, about sheep's wool, that if you have a rachel, but bas aids. In other words, the problem is the mother. Here, the problem is the mother. The mother was a goat. Even though this is a crossbreed that came out looking like a Rachel, you know why you follow the mother here? It means if there was a crossbreed, goat and sheep, but the mom is given Rachel, then it is considered Semet. I don't care which one, Now we're not speaking about the spinning of the thread, my friends. We're speaking about the weaving of the garment. No, you have to have both the length and the width threads. Both have to be either tzemer or pishton or tzemer and pishton. But now that we mentioned oir means leather. Leather is no matter beged or keli. However, when do you call it leather? It has to be a process. And even if you have processed leather, but it's so unformed, you didn't cut it into anything yet. Because the Torah says the words kli. Kli doesn't only mean that it's oir and not hide. It means you made it into a keli. I like Kavan's little picture. Kol shehein, kol on like beged 3x3. No, if it's like a kli of leather, kol shehein matam and a goyim. Obviously, it has to be the size of a gris, right? If not, it's not shay. Halacha, hey, oides chayesh bayom. What about the hide of fish? Here's a chiddush. Even if you only added one chut, or if you added to this fish skin, fish hide, not skin has to be mu'uba. And now you made a keli out of it. You don't follow roiv. Which is how many stitches, guys? What did we learn? 2 stitches. Stam, Thomas Mace. Because it was not made Lemishkov Moshe, which will be the series that we're starting, God willing, on Shabbos. Doesn't matter. If it fit the materials that we mentioned until now, yes. For example, if the ship's sail, it's not made to be sat upon. It's very delicate. It's not made, not delicate. You need that. It's left there. Or haparoiches, any curtain, or shavis shel sevacha, the sheet that the barber puts around your shoulders, so the hedalach should only get a little bit under your shirt, not a lot. Or mitbachai sfarim, any mantle that's made for sfarim, a belt, great example. All of these things are not subject to midrash, to mishkav moishav, or the tzuash and laces for shoes, the sandals. The Reichav Kegris doesn't go on the sandals. How can you have a sandals that is not even shaykh to these sizes? It goes to the above. You have to have a gris, because if it's less than a gris, then you're not going to have the minimum size of the 3 simanim, as we learned in the previous chapter. Any other cave that is even subject to the Tumas Mishkav and Moshav, like karim, like pillows, like cushions, like mattresses, they are avade if they're made out of tzemer, oy pishton, or oil, they're subject to hachemes, a drinking leather pouch. See, that's the clear. It's not about a beged made out of leather. It's a leather drinking keli. Bahaturmal, a carrying case. Now here, there's another nuance, Danny. Here, they're made out of folded over leather. So nidin kedarkon, which means that if you have parts of it, right, think about leather that you fold over. So there's going to be inside the fold, sometimes there's going to be added part. When you look at it, you don't have to look in there. Like, you want to know if it's spread. You look at it the way it appears. But what you do accept, what is considered spreading, if it goes from one side to the other, the doubled over, or if you began with it, it is on the inside, and now it's also on the outside. That Pisayan will also include going from one to the other. In other words, because it's doubled over. Sadin hamakumat, if you have a sheet that's creased, so here, not like by the leather pouch, that you don't look inside the area that's in between the stitches, no, but by a sheet, it's not so. You have to extend it to see what you're looking at. Mafshit and eskamatav, and only then v'rayin es nigel. Halachiches, hashasi, v'ha'erev. Now we're going to thread, not begodim. Remember, it's begodim, samaropishtim, and threads. So either they warp thread or the woof thread, whether they're made out of semer, meder and pishtim, as we said, they are subject to that tuma. Now it has to be the gris size. But how much of the thread do you need? So by a beged, we say 3 by 3. What's the minimum shear? Miyad mishiyatavu. From when you spun it, afa pishalei liban apishtan, or v'loy sholak hatzemed, which are the normal steps that you do prior to putting them into a beged. Now, I want to know that even though you didn't whiten them, it's still considered white enough. That's the white that's subject. Or maybe not. Maybe the white, maybe Danny, maybe the white is also only on the god. Very good. Maybe not on the threads. Oh, very good. How much do you have to have? How big does the ball of thread has to be? In order for you to be able to use that thread, even though you don't plan to use it both for the length and the width, but there should be enough thread for you to be able to use from it, side for the length and for the width, to make a beged of 3 by 3. Even though that you are only going to use this for the shasi, even though you will only use it for the erev. But if you would change your mind, it has to be that amount or more. Now, if you have this ball of thread that has that amount, but it's all separate threads, they're not together. So but they don't add up. It has to be one long thread. Halacha test. Now, if you have 2 different balls and they are connected one to the other with a thread, what do we want to know, my friends? If one becomes tummy, does the other one become tummy? Now here, to really understand this well, you have to have a visual of how they used to have these looms. Well, I'm just read the words. Part of the warp thread is round over the top of the frame of the loom. Part is over the bottom of the frame of the loom. The question is whether they are all considered one or not. If you have one side of a cloak, you have another side of a cloak, right? Like by our jackets, they're different layers, and they're sewn together with a thread. That is not enough of a connection. The other one, the other side, the other ball will remain tied, even though there is one chut that's connecting them. It's not enough of a connection. Now, if a blemish is discovered in the weaving thread, I'm reading here in footnote 8, the strand of the woof that passes through the warp to create the weave, or in the warp that has not yet been woven. Everything is tummy. Everything is tummy. However, if it only appears on the unwoven warp, then we don't say this is part of the woven beged. It's not yet woven in at all. It's not on the woven part at all. So only the strands are tamei, but the arig is tahor. And the same thing in the opposite. If now the neg appears only on the arig, then you have a machine today. Some of it was woven, some of it is still on the spools. So they're not connected. Then hashisi the tahor. Another example, if a blemish appears on a sudden, right on a blanket. Now, every blanket has strands protruding from it. That's already bottled to it. Then yes, but if only nirabanimin, doesn't go the other way around. Then a yadis. Who's bottled to whom? Hasadin toy. Pasa minanimin lasadin, then also the sadin is tamei, which is amazing. Connected but not connected. So somewhere in between. Allah. You have a coat upon which you have a nega. The borders may be saved. Borders meaning that they used to sew around these many coats, decorative, like you have by a talis gadol. That's a good example. Or he writes in the footnote over here, sometimes everyone had the same exact coat. So how, when you go to the mikveh, what guarantees you're going to take yours and not your friends? So they would sew some in addition to be like a simon, to know that is not part of it. And even if this border, if this simon, if this decoration is made out of samurai pishtan, you are allowed to save it, disconnected, because it's not beged and the end of this nefesh. Allah yudal. Beged musgar shetzavai, after a beged, not as muchlat. After a beged is isolated, Look at this chab, Danny. So what do? A beggar is only if it's white. So what did this genius do? He took it to a dyeing plant. Now it's dyed. Or if he sold it to a goy, tahar. How great is that? No, if you have a beggar musgar, one, what's it called? Trick, you know. You're getting out of the system. A loophole. Sell it to a guy. Huh? The chayim, the sort of b'chedim, that's the example I spoke of in the intro. Sort of b'chedim would mean that you have a beged that is only musgar, and it has a nega, and you have a goy that has the same type of beged. He didn't say you are allowed to. He's saying that if you did it, you got out of it. Or if you have a beged of goyim that have the same type of nega, but their begodim are not tamei for tzavah goy, and now they got mixed up. Kulam tohidim. Another example, if you only had a musgar, that's the difference between musgar and mukhlat. Even though it's tamei, but now you went ahead and you made it into small patches, and every patch itself is less than 3 tahor. However, then he lavadi tameya. So you accomplished by cutting it up into pieces. However, all of the above, Danny, whether you are allowed to do it or whether if you did it, it's tahar is only if the beged was never confirmed. Oh, beged, mukhlat. Even one in many thousands. And even if you cut it up into little pieces, less than 3 by 3, they remain tamei. Halacha yud gimel echad beged, or kliyoy, or the threads themselves of shasi, or the threads of edev, whether they are muskar or whether they are mukhlat le'inyim tuma. What's the level of tuma? Harei hu av mi avos hatuma is ka'adam mitzayda l'chal davar, which they are metama b'maga, Danny, and not only b'masa, but even b'biyah. And we learned yesterday at the end of Perek Yud, biyah is a unique tuma to tuma soras. Yeah. So what? It's a beged that's going to be placed inside a bias will impart tuma to Adam and Kalim. Va'oisa mishkov v'moishav. It also imparts mishkov v'moishav to that which is underneath it, even if it's underneath a stone that's underneath it. For example, if you have a beged menuga, or if you only have the threads, pishton etzemer, that are made for shasi or edith, or any clay oil that have haminugoim. And here again, even if it's only musgar, sheichnis mehen. Now look at the shear, Daniel. Who would think about kazayas? How do you come to it? The Rambam is going to say. So when we're saying that it's matama b'bayis, so if you brought an amount of a kazayas into a bias, that's tar. Not Danny 3 by 3. We'll get to that in a moment. That also. We're going to get to the details of it. The kazayas. Nitma kol asher b'bayis. Ben adam ben kelim. And mamash, just like if an adam that has that is a mitzvah goes into the bias, adam and kelim, they all become tamei and on the level of a rish. And then on top of the Evan, you put a kezayis, either of a beged or a kezayis of the shasi or erev. Even though, guys, we learned about the shear of shasi and erev, how big is the ball? We learned. Wait, very good. No. Size of it is to make the beged tamei.
Right.
The question is, when it comes to the ball of thread, there is another size that makes it subject to masaras. That size can be less than, I think, is less than a kazayas. Well, hold on a second. The Rambam is going to add a nuance to this kazayas. That if you put a kazayas l'maylam eno evan, that's the whole point of mishkav u'mayshav. Nitma mishkav v'yamayshav. But hold on. What happens if you started out, Danny, with a beged that doesn't have the size of a kazayas? What is that? Not the gris. Danny, gris is a simon of tum. I'm talking about the beged. If you have a matlas that's only 3 by 3, which is not a kazayas, here it's going to be metama no matter what. Kivan shenichnas ruba labayis tor timatu. So where do you have a kazayas? That if the garment to begin with is made out of many zaysim, then we say, so if you have the minimum amount, then you have to have ruba of that. You don't even have to have all of it, like by the Adam. Ruba of that little matlis is going to be matam everything in the bais. If you have a huge garment, we don't need the oil of the garment. Kazayis l'chumra. If only a kazayis amount went in, then it's matam.
Kazayis of that garment.
Yes. How do you come to a kazayis? Kazayis is shurei achil. That's going to be here. Says the Rambam. First of all, that's the way God told Moshe Rabbeinu. That's going to be the source, or it's an asmachta. Since it says, so in this pasuk you have a hekesh between nigei adam, nigei begadam, and batim. And now when it comes to the nigei adam, a mitzvah is like a mace. That's what you find that in Tfilas Moshe for a sister. When Moshe told Hashem, Al nasi kames. You get this link? When it comes to tumas oil, how much of the mace has to be under the bias for it to impart to? I know it's not the same, but still, kazayis. That's how you go from mace oil to the mitzvah to the beged, to mitzvah's adam to mitzvah's beged. Maha mace bekazayis. Afelu bekazayis. How great is that? Now the final halacha today. Halacha tes vav begod dem aminu goyim. Whether they are muskar, whether they are muchlad, no difference here. Just like we learned by Adam, you gotta send them michutz lamachne mishalchen oisim chutz leir. However, here they're more chamud. By Adam, what did we learn yesterday? Chutz leir is only a ear that is mukaf chayma. But by Begodim, it's even more machmir. You got to send it out of every single city. Even if it's not surrounded with a wall. And indeed, Zok the Rambam, the Zachomer, Babegodim, Iba Adam. To be continued. Tomorrow will be the final 3 chapters. Thank you.